They came expecting primitives, tribes with fire, fear, and confusion. But what the Zephyrians found on Kepler 442b was silence. Watching eyes, measured steps, technology buried under simplicity. The humans didn't greet them, they studied them. Every word, every movement, every hesitation recorded. And when they finally saw the children calm, calculating, and smarter than their highest-ranking tacticians, they realized too late. This wasn't a colony, it was a test. And humanity? Humanity had been preparing, not for war, but for something far more dangerous, understanding. When silence speaks louder than words, the crystalline spires of the Zephyrian survey vessel Astral Wind pierced through the violet atmosphere of Kepler, 442b like needles through silk. Commander Thylex stood at the observation deck, his elongated fingers drumming against the transparent aluminum viewing port. The planet below appeared unremarkable, another forgotten world in the vast expanse of unclaimed space. Atmospheric composition stable, gravity 1.2 standard units, temperature readings nominal, Navigator Zenth reported from his station. His voice carried the usual efficiency of a seasoned officer, but Thylex detected something else. Curiosity, perhaps. However, Commander, we're detecting artificial structures on the northern continent. Thylex's four eyes narrowed in sequence, a trait common to his species when focusing intently. The Zephyrian Empire had mapped this sector 3 times over the past century. No advanced civilizations were supposed to exist here. Define artificial structures, Navigator. Energy signatures suggest metal construction, geometric patterns inconsistent with natural formation. But Zenth paused, his webbed hands moving across the holographic interface. The readings are strange. The structures appear primitive, yet our sensors detect technology that shouldn't exist at this level of development. The commander's communication ridge flared slightly, a sign of growing interest. In his 40 years of service to the Zephyrian Empire, Thylex had encountered 17 different species at various stages of development. Most followed predictable patterns. They built cities, developed weapons, reached for the stars, and eventually made contact with the greater galactic community. This felt different. Prepare a landing party, Thylex commanded. Standard first contact, protocols. I want full sensor sweeps, diplomatic recorders active, and keep the weapon systems on standby, but not engaged. 2 hours later, Thylex led a team of 6 Zephyrians through the dense forest surrounding the detected settlement. The vegetation was Earth-like, a term used throughout the galaxy to describe worlds capable of supporting the mysterious human species that had vanished from galactic records nearly a century ago. The trees were tall, the air clean, and everything felt almost too perfect. Movement ahead, whispered tactical specialist Nyx, her enhanced senses detecting what others might miss. Multiple life forms organize patterns. They know we're here. Through the treeline, the settlement revealed itself gradually. Simple wooden buildings surrounded by what appeared to be basic farms and workshops. Children played in dirt paths between structures. Adults tended to various tasks with tools that looked handmade. At first glance, it resembled countless primitive settlements the Zephyrians had encountered across the galaxy. But Thylex noticed the details that didn't fit. The children's games involved complex geometric patterns drawn in the soil, patterns that resembled stellar navigation charts. The adults moved with a precision that suggested advanced training despite their rustic appearance. And most unsettling of all, everyone seemed aware of the Zephyrian presence without appearing alarmed or surprised. A woman emerged from the largest building, walking toward them with calm, measured steps. She appeared to be the species humans, a race the Zephyrians knew, primarily through ancient galactic records. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with years of experience, but her eyes held an intelligence that seemed to catalog every detail of the alien visitors. Commander Thylex of the Zephyrian Empire, she said in perfect Zephyrian, causing several of his team members to step backward in surprise. We've been expecting you. The words hung in the air like a challenge. No primitive settlement should know their language, let alone their names and titles. Thylex's communication ridge flattened against a skull, a defensive posture his species had evolved over millennia. I am Dr. Elena Martinez, the woman continued, switching to Standard Galactic without missing a beat. Colony Administrator and Primary Contact Specialist. Would you prefer to conduct this meeting in your native language, Standard Galactic, or perhaps one of the 17 other languages we've prepared for your arrival? Navigator Zenth made a choking sound that his species produced when deeply shocked. Thylex remained outwardly calm, but his mind raced. How could an isolated human settlement know Zephyrian cultural protocols? How did they know 17 languages? And, most importantly, how did they know his team was coming? Standard Galactic will suffice, Thylex replied carefully. Dr. Martinez, this world shows no records of advanced civilization in our databases. Could you explain how your people came to settle here? Elena smiled, an expression that seemed both welcoming and somehow calculating. Commander, would you and your team join us for a meal? I believe we have much to discuss, and some conversations are better held away from recording devices. She gestured toward his team's equipment with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what each device was designed to do. Thylex realized that somehow, impossibly, these humans knew more about Zephyrian technology than they should. As they walked through the settlement, Thylex observed everything with growing unease. The buildings, while appearing simple, incorporated architectural principles that maximized both efficiency and defensive positioning. The children who had seemed to be playing were actually engaged in complex, problem-solving exercises disguised as games, and every adult they passed acknowledged the alien visitors with polite nods, as if the arrival of extraterrestrial life was a common occurrence. How many of our people have visited this world? Thylex asked quietly as they approached what appeared to be a community center. Elena paused at the entrance. Your people specifically? You're the 14th Zephyrian expedition to discover our settlement. Overall, we've had contact with representatives from 46 different species over the past 30 years. The revelation hit Thylex like a plasma blast. 46 species? The Zephyrian Empire considered itself one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, yet they had no records of this world hosting regular contact with dozens of alien cultures. Inside the building, the truth became even more complex. The walls were lined with detailed drawings, charts, and what appeared to be technical specifications. But these weren't crude cave paintings. They were sophisticated analyses of alien technology, cultural patterns, and behavioral studies. Zephyrian ship designs hung next to detailed breakdowns of their social hierarchy. Weapon specifications were cataloged alongside diplomatic protocols. You've been studying us, Thylex said, the statement carrying the weight of accusation. We've been studying everyone, Elena corrected gently. Commander, may I introduce you to someone? A young human emerged from shadows, a boy who couldn't have been more than 12 years old by human standards. His eyes held the same calculating intelligence as Elena's, but multiplied in intensity. This is Kale, Elena said. He's been observing your team since you entered our atmosphere. Kale, would you share your assessment with our guests? The boy stepped forward with confidence that seemed impossible for his age. When he spoke, his voice was clear and analytical. Commander Thylex, your ship's approach vector suggests advanced navigation systems, but conservative tactical programming. Your team formation follows standard Zephyrian first contact protocols, indicating formal military training, but limited experience with genuinely unknown variables. Navigator Zenth shows signs of stress in his posture, specifically concern about information that conflicts with existing databases. Tactical Specialist Nix maintains defensive positioning despite no apparent threats, suggesting either excellent training or previous encounters with hostile situations. Thylex stared at the child, his 4 eyes unable to process what he was hearing. This boy had analyzed their entire team, their ship, and their procedures with a precision that would impress Zephyrian military academies. How? Was all Thylex could manage. Elena gestured to chairs around a large table. Commander, What we're about to share with you will change your understanding of not just this settlement, but humanity's place in the galaxy. The question is, are you prepared to learn something that might contradict everything your empire believes about isolated civilizations and first contact? As Thylex took his seat, surrounded by humans who seemed to know more about his own species than he did, one thought dominated his mind. This wasn't a primitive settlement they had discovered. This was something far more sophisticated and potentially dangerous, a human outpost that had been watching, learning, and preparing for something much larger than simple first contact. The young boy, Kale, pulled out a handmade journal filled with detailed notes and sketches. "Commander, would you like to see our files on the other 45 species that have found us? I think you'll find the patterns quite interesting." Thylex realized that his team hadn't discovered this settlement. They had been allowed to find it. And now, sitting in this deceptively simple building surrounded by humans who spoke his language and understood his culture better than many of his own people, he began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire was as advanced as they believed. The silence that followed was indeed louder than any words could have been. Every move measured. Every breath counted. 3 hours had passed since Commander Thylex and his team entered the human settlement, and every minute had shattered another assumption about primitive civilizations. Elena Martinez sat across from him, calmly sipping what appeared to be tea, while young Kale spread out drawings and charts that documented alien behaviors with scientific precision. The Altarian delegation was particularly interesting, Kale said, pointing to a detailed sketch of insectoid beings. They arrived assuming superiority based on technological advancement, but their social structure made them predictable. The Corvin scouts were more challenging. They attempted stealth insertion rather than open contact. Thylex's communication ridge rippled with growing concern. "You're describing these encounters as if they were experiments." Elena set down her cup with deliberate care. "Not experiments, Commander. Observations. Learning opportunities. Every species that discovers us teaches us something valuable about galactic civilization." "And what?" Thylex asked slowly. "Have my people taught you?" Kale consulted his journal, flipping through pages covered in notes written in multiple alien scripts. "Zephyrians value honor and directness, but your military protocols create blind spots. You assume technological superiority equals strategic advantage. You're excellent at analyzing what you can scan and measure, but you struggle with variables that don't fit your databases." The accuracy of the assessment was disturbing. Navigator Zenth shifted uncomfortably, his web hands clenching and unclenching, a nervous habit that apparently hadn't escaped the boy's notice. "These observations you've made," Thylex continued, "they're not being conducted by untrained colonists. You're operating with the precision of a military intelligence unit." Elena smiled, but there was something proud and dangerous in her expression. "Commander, let me show you something that might help you understand our situation." She stood and walked to what appeared to be a simple wooden cabinet. When she opened it, Thylex saw technology that shouldn't exist in any isolated settlement. Communication arrays, data storage systems, and analysis equipment that rivaled anything in the Zephyrian fleet. "How?" was becoming Thylex's most frequently used word. 46 different species, Commander. Each one contributes something to our understanding. The Altarians shared insect-based biotechnology before they realized what they were doing. The Corvins left behind stealth field generators when they thought they were conducting secret reconnaissance. Your own people provided excellent examples of crystalline power matrices during previous visits. Thylex felt his worldview shifting like tectonic plates. "Previous visits? We have no records." "Of course you don't," Elena interrupted gently, "because we've never made formal contact before now. Your people conduct their surveys, take their measurements, file their reports, and leave. We simply observe and learn." Young Kale looked up from his notes. "Would you like to see the tactical assessment we've compiled on Zephyrian weakness points?" "Kale," Elena warned, but the boy was already pulling out another journal. "It's not an insult," the child explained earnestly. "Every species has predictable patterns. Zephyrians rely heavily on sensor data, which makes you vulnerable to misdirection. Your communication protocols are sophisticated but follow rigid hierarchies, making them easy to intercept and decode. And your diplomatic training assumes other species want something from you, which blinds you to situations where you might be the ones being studied. Thylex realized his team was being analyzed in real time. Every gesture, every response, every tactical decision was being cataloged by humans who had somehow turned first contact into a learning exercise. "Commander," Elena said, settling back into her chair, "I need to share something with you that your empire isn't going to hear. This settlement, we're not refugees or survivors or some lost colony trying to rebuild. We're a training facility." The words hung in the air like an unexploded weapon. Tactical specialist Nyx finally spoke, her voice tight with controlled alarm. "Training for what?" Elena's expression grew serious. "Training for the day when humanity joins the galactic community. When we do, we intend to be prepared." Thylex's four eyes focused simultaneously on Elena's face, searching for deception. The galactic community already exists. Multiple species have achieved interstellar civilization. What makes humans think they can simply join? "Because," Elena said quietly, "we've been watching you all for decades. Every species, every empire, every alliance. And we've identified patterns that the established galactic powers haven't recognized." She gestured to Kale, who began pulling out star charts covered in markings and annotations. These weren't crude drawings, they were sophisticated tactical analyses covering multiple star systems. "There are threats in this galaxy that established civilizations aren't prepared for," Elena continued. "Species that don't follow the normal patterns of development. Entities that view the current galactic order as obstacles to be removed rather than civilizations to be contacted." Thylex studied the charts, recognizing star systems and trade routes mapped with precision that matched Zephyrian naval intelligence. How could an isolated human settlement possibly know about galactic threats that escape the notice of entire empires? Kale spoke up, his young voice carrying absolute certainty. "Because we're not isolated. This settlement is one of hundreds scattered across 40 different worlds. Each one specializes in studying different aspects of galactic civilization. We observe, analyze, and share information through networks that no established government knows exist." The revelation struck Thylex like a physical blow. Hundreds of human settlements? Networks spanning 40 worlds? The implications were staggering. "You're describing an intelligence operation that spans sectors," Navigator Zen said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're describing preparation," Elena corrected. "Humanity scattered after our homeworld fell silent. But we didn't disappear. We adapted. Each settlement learned to specialize, to contribute to a larger understanding. Some focus on technology, others on diplomacy, still others on tactical analysis." She pointed to a section of the star chart covered in red markings. "This settlement specializes in first contact scenarios and cultural analysis. We've learned to read 46 different species, understand their strengths and weaknesses, predict their responses to various stimuli." "And what," Thylex asked carefully, "do you intend to do with this information?" Elena's smile returned, but now it carried a weight that made the commander uncomfortable. "That depends, Commander. Are you here as representatives of the Zephyrian Empire conducting a survey mission? Or are you here as individuals capable of seeing beyond the limitations of established galactic order?" The question was clearly a test, but Thylex couldn't determine what the correct answer might be. Around him, his team waited for guidance, while the humans watched with the patience of predators who knew their prey was already trapped. "What are you really asking?" Thylex finally said. Kale closed his journal and looked directly at the Zephyrian commander. "We're asking if you want to know what's coming. The threat that established civilizations can't see because they're too busy maintaining their current positions to recognize that something is preparing to take those positions away from them." Elena leaned forward. "Commander, in approximately 18 months, Your empire is going to detect long-range signals from beyond the galactic rim. Signals that don't match any known communication protocols. Your analysts will spend months trying to decode them, and when they finally succeed, they'll discover that something has been watching galactic civilization just like we've been watching individual species. The silence that followed was deafening. Phylex felt as though he was standing at the edge of an abyss, looking down at truths his mind wasn't prepared to process. "How could you possibly know this?" he asked. Because Elena said simply, "We've been tracking their scouts for 3 years. And unlike the established galactic powers, we've been preparing for contact instead of hoping it never comes." Young Kale opened his journal again, revealing pages covered with sketches of technology and beings that looked nothing like any known galactic species. "Commander, would you like to see what we know about the ones who've been watching us all?" Phylex realized that this human settlement had turned his understanding of the galaxy upside down. They weren't primitive colonists or isolated survivors. They were the advanced intelligence network for a species that had been preparing for something the entire galactic community remained blind to, and now they were offering to share their knowledge. The question was whether he was brave enough to learn what they had discovered. The galaxy was never ready for humanity. Commander Phylex stared at the sketches in Kale's journal, his 4 eyes trying to process images of technology and beings that seemed to exist beyond the scope of known galactic civilization. The drawings showed ships with geometric designs that hurt to look at directly, beings whose forms seemed to shift between organic and mechanical, and weapons that appeared to function on principles that violated several laws of physics. "These signals you mentioned," Phylex said slowly, "the ones my empire will detect in 18 months. You've been tracking their source." Elena Martinez nodded gravely. "Not just tracking, Commander. We've been preparing. The entities these signals represent don't view galactic civilization the way established species do. They don't see governments, alliances, or treaties. They see resources to be harvested and obstacles to be removed." Kale turned several pages in his journal, revealing star charts marked with movement patterns and projected trajectories. "They've been conducting what we call deep reconnaissance for over a decade, probing the edges of populated space, studying our defensive capabilities, mapping our trade routes and communication networks. And none of the galactic empires have detected this." Navigator Zenth asked, his voice carrying disbelief. "Would you have detected us if we hadn't revealed ourselves?" Elena countered, "These entities are operating on a level of sophistication that makes our best stealth technology look primitive, but they have one weakness." Phylex leaned forward despite himself, which is, "They understand established patterns of behavior." Elena explained, "They can predict how the Zephyrian Empire will respond to threats, how the Altarian Consortium will react to invasion, how the Corvin Alliance will attempt to defend their territory. What they can't predict is something entirely new entering the equation." "Humanity," Phylex said, understanding beginning to dawn. Elena smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Commander, let me tell you a story about human history. When our species was young and confined to a single world, we faced threats that should have destroyed us. Natural disasters, predators, diseases, wars between our own people. Do you know how we survived?" "Adaptation," Kale said, answering what was clearly a rhetorical question. "More than adaptation," Elena continued. "Unity. When faced with extinction-level threats, humans have always done something that apparently no other species in the galaxy has mastered. We've learned to work together despite our differences, to pool our resources, share our knowledge, and coordinate our efforts on a scale that transcends individual survival." She gestured to the star charts covering the walls. "Every settlement represented here specializes in different aspects of galactic civilization. But we share everything. A technological breakthrough on one world becomes available to all. A tactical insight discovered in one sector is immediately transmitted across the network. We've spent decades learning not just how to survive in isolation, but how to coordinate as a species spread across hundreds of worlds." Phylex felt something cold forming in his chest. You're describing a level of intercolony coordination that most galactic empires can't achieve with their own core worlds. Because most galactic empires are built on hierarchies, Elena replied. Central governments controlling outlying territories were built on networks. Every settlement is autonomous but connected. Every human community contributes to the whole while maintaining the flexibility to adapt to local conditions. Kale looked up from his journal. Commander, when these entities arrive, and they will arrive, the established galactic powers are going to respond according to their traditional patterns. The Zephyrian Empire will attempt to negotiate from a position of strength. The Altarian Consortium will try to buy them off with technology transfers. The Corvin Alliance will prepare for defensive warfare. And all of those responses will fail, Elena added, because these entities have been studying those exact patterns for years. They know how each empire will react, and they've prepared countermeasures. Thylex's communication, ridge, flattened, completely against the skull. But humanity will respond differently. Humanity will do what we've always done when faced with an existential threat, Elena said. We'll adapt, coordinate, and find a way to survive that no one expects. She walked to another cabinet and withdrew a communication device that clearly incorporated technology from multiple alien species. Commander, I'm about to show you something that will either terrify your government or convince them to join us. This is a real-time communication link with human settlements across 47 worlds. The device activated, displaying a holographic interface that rivaled anything in the Zephyrian fleet. Dozens of signals appeared, each representing a different human community scattered across the galaxy. Settlement 12, report status. Elena spoke into the device. A voice responded immediately, clear despite the vast distance. Dr. Martinez, we've completed integration of Corvin stealth technology with Altarian biotechnology. Early results suggest we can achieve sensor invisibility that exceeds either species' individual capabilities. Settlement 23, tactical analysis update. Another voice answered promptly. We've confirmed Entity Scout presence in the Vega sector. Behavioral patterns match projections. Recommend implementing Protocol 7 within the next 4 months. Elena deactivated the device and turned back to Thylex. Commander, 47 human settlements are currently coordinating the largest intelligence and preparation operation in galactic history. We're not just preparing to survive the coming invasion. We're preparing to save everyone else. The magnitude of what Elena was describing crashed over Thylex like a wave. Humanity hadn't disappeared from a galaxy. They had evolved into something unprecedented, a species-wide network designed to protect galactic civilization from threats that established governments couldn't even perceive. You've been planning this for decades, Thylex said, the statement carrying more awe than accusation. Longer, Kale said, quietly, the planning started before my grandmother was born. Humans have always been good at thinking in generations rather than election cycles or quarterly reports. Elena sat back down, her expression becoming businesslike. Commander, here's what's going to happen. In approximately 18 months, your empire and every other galactic power will detect those signals I mentioned. You'll spend several months trying to decode them. And when you finally manage it, you'll realize you're facing something you've never encountered before. She leaned forward. At that point, you'll have a choice. You can follow traditional protocols, attempt diplomacy, prepare defenses, form alliances with other established powers, and watch as every one of those strategies fails exactly as these entities expect them to. Or, Thylex asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Or you can join the network. Share your technology, your knowledge, your tactical expertise with human settlements across the galaxy. Help us prepare coordinated responses that these entities won't be able to predict because they've never existed before. Kale opened his journal to a final page covered with mathematical equations and strategic projections. Commander, we've run the scenarios. If galactic civilization responds to this threat using traditional methods, the estimated survival rate is 12%. If we coordinate through the human network using adaptive strategies and integrated technologies, the survival rate jumps to 73%. Thylex stared at the numbers, his analytical mind unable to dispute the logic even as his cultural conditioning rebelled against the implications. You're asking me to convince my empire to subordinate itself to human coordination. We're asking you to help your empire survive, Elena corrected. The choice is yours, Commander. You can return to your ship, file a standard report about discovering a primitive human settlement, and watch as events unfold exactly as we've predicted. Or you can become part of something larger than any single empire. Navigator Xanth spoke for the first time in nearly an hour. What guarantee do we have that humanity won't use this network to dominate galactic civilization once the threat is eliminated? Elena's laugh was genuinely amused. Navigator, we've had 47 settlements studying 46 different species for decades. If we wanted to dominate the galaxy, we'd have started already. Our goal isn't conquest, it's preservation. She gestured to the walls covered with detailed analyses of alien cultures. Every species in this galaxy has something valuable to contribute. The Zephyrian Empire's analytical precision, the Altarian Consortium's biotechnology, the Corvin Alliance's tactical flexibility. Humanity's role isn't to replace these civilizations. It's to help them work together in ways that transcend their individual limitations. Thylex stood slowly, his mind reeling with the implications of everything he'd learned. This conversation never happened officially. Of course not, Elena agreed. But unofficially, you now have access to information that could save your people. The question is what you choose to do with it. Kale closed his journal and looked directly at the Zephyrian commander. Commander, in 18 months, when those signals arrive, remember this conversation. Remember that somewhere in the galaxy, humans are working to coordinate a response that might save everyone. As Thylex led his team back through the forest toward their ship, his mind wrestled with truths that challenged everything he believed about galactic civilization. Behind them, the human settlement continued its work, watching, learning, preparing for a threat that the established powers couldn't yet perceive. But now, at least one Zephyrian knew the truth. When the time came, he would have to decide whether his loyalty lay with the Empire's traditions or with the galaxy's survival. The Silent Watchers had spoken. Now, the question was whether anyone would listen before it was too late to end the distance. Young Kale made a final note in his journal, Zephyrian First Contact, successful. Probability of cooperation, 67%. Recommendation, monitor for 18 months, then activate Protocol 9. The galaxy was about to change, and for the first time in decades, there might be reason for hope.